Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're diving deep into a pretty recent and high-profile controversy. It involves the public figure Candace Owens and Brigitte Macron.
That's right.
And our mission, really, for this deep dive is to unpack these claims of lack of proof about Macron's identity. We want to contrast those claims with the evidence that was reportedly presented and maybe explore some analytical takes on Owens' behavior, all based on our source material.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, the sources we've looked at are transcript excerpts from a YouTube video. This video specifically digs into Candace Owens' assertions and the counter evidence that was supposedly given to her legal team.
Yeah, it gives a pretty interesting view on how information, or maybe misinformation, spreads.
It really does.
And the thing that just leaps out right away from the material is this contradiction. Owens publicly claims, no proof was provided, but the documents we reviewed, they suggest she was actually sent quite a lot. Extensive evidence is the phrase used.
Right. We're talking childhood pictures of Brigitte Macron, proof suggesting she's the biological mother of 3 kids, photos from her first wedding back when she was young, and even sworn testimony.
Sworn testimony from
who? From her children and her previous husband, according to the source. Plus, a birth announcement, like a newspaper clipping.
Wow. Okay. So quite a collection of things. That definitely paints a different picture than no proof.
It certainly does. And the source material really emphasizes the detail here. It wasn't just like one photo. It was early childhood pictures, documents about her kids, those wedding pictures.
Right.
And yeah, that specific mention of sworn testimony from the family, plus that newspaper birth announcement.
And apparently it didn't even stop there. The documentation kept coming.
That's what the source indicates. Later on, more stuff was apparently provided. Things like printouts showing Brigitte and her brother together.
Okay.
A whole bunch of other images, publications, even birth certificates and hospital documents.
Birth certificates and hospital documents, too.
Seems so. And it all apparently culminated in this pretty large document. The source mentions 200 and some odd pages delivered right to Owens or her legal team.
Over 200 pages. That is. Well, that's a lot of information.
It is. And, this makes her alleged public statement seem, starkly different.
How so?
The material we looked at points out her public claims were basically that she got nothing, that Macron's side just gave a trust me bro response. No real evidence.
But the source also suggests her own basis for the claims was kind of trust me bro too.
That's the irony highlighted in the analysis, yes. It presents a real contrast.
And the material also talks about moving the goalposts. What does that refer to?
Yeah, the analysis observes this pattern in Owens' actions. So according to the source, after images were supposedly provided, she then started demanding a blood test.
A blood test, okay.
And then after that, the claim was reportedly that the pictures provided weren't even of Brigitte Macron, but of her brother.
So it suggests that maybe no amount of evidence was actually going to be enough for the narrative she was pushing.
That's certainly the impression the analysis gives, which leads to a really fundamental point the material emphasizes.
Which is?
The burden of proof. The basic idea that if you're making a huge accusation,
right,
the responsibility is generally on you, the accuser, to provide the evidence, not really on the person being accused to disprove something that hasn't been substantiated in the first place.
That makes sense. Okay, so if that's the kind of detailed proof allegedly sent to her team, what about Owens' sources? What was she basing her narrative on, according to the material?
Well, this is where it gets pretty interesting. The source material details some, let's say, unusual avenues for such serious claims.
Unusual how?
One claim in the analysis is that a key source for Owens' narrative about Brigitte Macron was a man described as a medium.
A medium? Like someone who talks to spirits.
That's how the source presents it, yes.
Yeah.
And it's highlighted as particularly notable because Owens publicly identifies as Christian.
Okay, that's just interesting. Any other sources mentioned?
Yeah, the analysis also mentions 2 journalists. One is specified as French. Maybe both were. They had apparently written about this theory before.
So a medium and a couple of journalists.
Yeah.
It's not exactly standard journalistic sourcing for a claim this big.
It's certainly presented as an unconventional mix in the source material, yeah.
Okay, so moving on from the sources, the material we looked at then tries to analyze Candace Owens' behavior itself. It uses a specific psychological framework.
It does. It suggests her actions align with something it calls genuine malignant narcissism.
Malignant narcissism. Okay, how does the source define that? Is it just about being vain?
No, not really. The analysis describes it as something deeper, affecting maybe 3-5% of people. It's characterized by someone first lying to themselves and then lying to their audience.
Lying to themselves first.
Yeah, like they genuinely believe their own fabrication. And this can lead to creating, whole series or narratives based on these lies, the source suggests these individuals might genuinely not understand why anyone would oppose them. And it often stems from what the analysis calls a shame-based disorder. So they create this image or persona to hide behind.
And the audience plays a role.
A huge role, according to this analysis. The audience, which the source actually calls the cult of Candace Owens, becomes what's termed narcissistic supply.
Narcissistic supply, meaning?
Basically, the attention, the validation, the agreement from the audience feeds this perceived need for affirmation and reinforces the persona. It's presented as a kind of psychological loop.
I see. And the source connects this idea of narcissism directly to conspiracy theories.
Yes, very direct. The analysis argues it's not just about believing conspiracy theories, but actively using them to manipulate people, to gain that narcissistic supply.
So it's a tool for manipulation in this view.
Exactly. It's framed as a core behavioral pattern, not just, a quirky belief.
Does the analysis give specific examples of these alleged manipulative conspiracies from Owens?
It does. It brings up accusations she apparently made against other creators, including the person who made the YouTube video we're drawing from. She allegedly accused them of being paid $1,000 per video to criticize her.
Okay.
And then there's another, even more specific claim mentioned that an 80-year-old rabbi was supposedly paying pastors in Bitcoin to smear her reputation.
Wow. Those are very concrete, very specific accusations.
They are, and the analysis suggests this fits a pattern. From the source's viewpoint, she can't accept genuine criticism because it clashes with her self-image as a purveyor of truth. So any opposition must be part of a conspiracy.
It sounds like a very insulated way of thinking, if that analysis holds.
That's the implication, yes.
Yeah.
That legitimate dissent just doesn't compute within that frame.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. The source material also uses an analogy to describe Candace Owens' intellectual style, something about Bill Nye.
Yeah, it likens her approach to Bill Nye in a scientific term, but for kids, or calls her a kid's philosopher.
A kid's philosopher. What's the point they're making there?
The implication, according to the source's analysis, is that her arguments might sound smart on the surface, especially if you're not looking too closely, but they lack real depth. The material suggests it appeals to what it calls an adolescent at its core mindset, people who maybe don't do deep research or critical thinking on their own.
So the idea is it's kind of superficially appealing, but doesn't hold up to deeper scrutiny?
Yeah.
And maybe something people grow out of.
That seems to be the core idea presented in the analysis, yes.
Yeah.
That you might develop more critical thinking skills and then see past it.
Okay. So given all this, the claims, the alleged evidence, the analysis of behavior, what does the source say about the real-world consequences? The language used seemed pretty strong.
It is quite stark. The source asserts that actions like these mean she has genuine blood libel on her hands.
Blood libel. That's a very serious term.
Extremely serious. And historically loaded. Just for clarity for you listening, blood libel is a false, dangerous accusation historically used against Jewish people, alleging things like ritual murder. It's deeply inflammatory.
So the source is using that term deliberately to convey extreme harm.
It seems so. The analysis views these claims not just as wrong, but as genuinely harmful and dangerous. It predicts things could get very messy, legally escalating lawsuits, an ugly outcome. And it argues that just saying her statements aren't blood libel doesn't make it true, in their view.
And it draws a parallel to Alex Jones.
A very direct one. The analysis points to Jones ending up with that massive debt, nearly $1 billion.
Right.
Because, as the source alleges, he was completely unwilling to question his own Sandy Hook narrative, even in court. It's held up as a cautionary tale.
A warning about sticking to a narrative no matter what, even when evidence piles up.
Exactly. And the analysis talks about a feedback loop.
How does that work?
It describes the public figure comparing her to a gladiator, just listening to the cheers of the crowd, the positive reinforcement from her audience, and kind of ignoring external reality. This validation loop, the source argues, feeds the beast, fuels the delusion, and pushes them deeper down their own rabbit hole until potentially it collapses like it did for Joan.
It's a powerful image. Okay, finally, let's touch on the audience again. The material called it the cult of Candace Owens.
Yeah.
What does the analysis predict for her followers?
Well, it suggests a split. The prediction is that some listeners eventually will start to lose trust. They'll feel bamboozled, as the source puts it.
But not everyone.
No. The analysis predicts a majority will likely keep defending her. It argues that once someone is deeply invested in what the source calls a cult ideology, it's incredibly hard for them to break it.
Why is that?
The idea presented is that external arguments don't really penetrate. The person has to kind of come to the realization themselves. The source suggests that all you can really do is maybe plant some seeds of doubt, leave some breadcrumbs of reality, but you can't force them out of it.
Right. It has to come from within. in that view.
That's the idea.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what does this whole deep dive really illuminate for us? Looking at the claims, the alleged counter-evidence, the analysis.
Well, I think it really highlights how crucial it is to, verify information, to actually look at the evidence or lack thereof, and to maybe try and understand the motivations behind certain public narratives, especially when, as reported here, there seems to be a lot of evidence available, but it's just ignored or dismissed.
Definitely makes you think.
For sure. And it raises a bigger question, maybe a provocative thought for you listening.
Yeah.
In our current information age where these really entrenched narratives can just persist, sometimes getting stronger, even when faced with piles of evidence like the kind described here, what's our responsibility as people consuming this information? What does it actually take for someone to break free from what the source describes as these powerful cult ideologies? And maybe what's the long-term cost to society when the basic principle of burden of proof just gets ignored by people making really impactful public claims?
That's definitely something to chew on. A lot to think about there regarding how we engage with information and public figures today.